Hello and welcome back to the Scaling Europe show. We have got an amazing show lined up. But before we get into it all, I just want to do a quick shout out to my sponsors. Of course, Checkout.com. We have a very special guest from Checkout joining us today and a brand new sponsor, Gather. Gather is an amazing company that helps startups find and save money through partnering up with leading organizations. Checkout.com is, of course, one of the leading tech companies to come out of Europe in the last decade, an amazing fintech, an amazing partner for the show. We've got Rory O'Neill, the CMO at Checkout.com, joining us shortly. Then we've got Taos Edmondson, who's a partner at DMG Ventures and one of the co-founders of OnStage. We've got their famous demo day next week. We also have Tom Pope, co-founder and CEO of Adfin, an index-backed company that is flying at the moment. And finally, we have Mark Fairless, who is the CEO at Clearbank. Amazing. Well, look, we've got Rory here, so let's welcome him into the stream. And Rory, you are live. How are you doing?
I'm really good, Seb. Thanks for having us this morning.
It is my absolute pleasure. It seems like Checkout.com is on an absolute tear at the moment. It has been announcement after announcement, product announcements, partnership announcements, traction. Can you talk about some of the biggest news that's kind of hit recently and is kind of demonstrating why Checkout is doing so well at the moment?
Yeah, look, Seb, it's obviously a very exciting time for us. We're fortunate enough to play in an incredibly dynamic and fast-moving market. And I think, look, Checkout is a digital payments provider working with many of the largest brands, digital brands across the world. Everyone from ASOS through Vinted and Pinterest and, Get Your Guide, Temu, Klarna. And just yesterday we announced HelloFresh. So, merchants are buying into our proposition. And very simply, we exist to solve one of the core problems in the digital economy, which is how do you just increase payment acceptance rates as you go from the physical world to the digital world? And unfortunately, when you and I use our cards online, even though we buy exactly the same things with exactly the same merchants using the exact same cards, the acceptance rate can drop when you're online to around 80%, whereas when we're physically holding that card in a store, it can be 99.9%. So that is a big problem for merchants around the world that we're trying to solve, and our focus is on solving that with machine learning, AI, data science, and all the product innovation that we put together.
And it seems to be going tremendously well. Some of the things that you've reported recently is like 30% net revenue growth for this year. I think a whopping $300 billion is your total e-commerce payment volume that you're kind of expecting to see in 2025. These are like amazing numbers. Where are you seeing some of that growth come from?
Yeah, look, I think the growth is really around the world. I think Checkout was born out of the UK. We're very proud to be a London headquartered fintech, Seb, and thank you for helping us tell our story. It's a really important thing for us. We've grown across Europe, we've grown across the Middle East, North Africa. We've got a great proposition in APAC. We help Chinese merchants that are trying to reach consumers around the world as they sell their goods into those markets. And the US is a focus for us as well. We've grown, I think, 80% year over year in 2024 in the US. It's a significant part of our business. The brands that we're winning now are global and expecting to operate in all these markets around the world. And we expect the US to be a significant investment for us and will probably be our largest region actually by the end of 2027. So look, the numbers are super important. The growth is super important. Obviously, we take care of net revenue growth being, as you said, 30% year on year. We're thrilled to be processing now by the end of the year more than $300 billion of e-com revenue, GMV, so rather as we kind of work on it. And that's a testament to the amount of merchants that we're working with and the growth that we have.
That's amazing. Can we touch a bit more on the US? What's happened in the US? What did you get right that has enabled the US to almost kind of, take over as your biggest region by 2027?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. I think the core of what we're up to, the great thing about Checkout is that we're purely focused on that digital enterprise space at the minute from a payments perspective. And, what enterprises need is we've got robust AI and machine learning models that are really training and learning based on the whole of the network data to try and optimize and improve that acceptance rate when people buy cards online. So that's a great proposition for digital brands, around the world, but obviously particularly in the US where the scale of everything is just bigger.
Yeah.
The US is the biggest payments market in the world. And we've got a great proposition for that market now, investing in various product capabilities to do so. So, we run 80 million optimizations a day. We run optimizations on 10 million transactions. The scale of the science, if you like, that we've put behind that transaction intelligence and making sure that acceptance rates are as high as they possibly can be is a really important thing. So that's kind of the first part. And then the second part, there's been some changes to the way the US market has structured from that sort of sense. We announced obviously last week that we've got a MAL-B license. It's quite a technical license from the state of Georgia, but essentially what it allows us to do is to take more control over merchant acquiring in the US market, which means that we can offer US merchants even higher and even greater capabilities in terms of payments performance by just reducing the amount of complexities and intermediaries that are in that mix. So that's a big deal for us. And once that's fully accepted and fully live, in 2026, then that will be even adding to our existing proposition in the US market. So, again, US is a really big payments market. So there's some really great merchants over there. We've got a really existing proposition that we think is really good, and we're growing fast there. And I think it's only going to get better with the innovation that we put behind it.
And so that Georgia banking charter, it seemed like quite a game-changing new application that you've put in. It's going to unlock a lot of things for checkout. Is that going to take you in direct competition with Stripe? And is that who you're going after in the US?
Yeah, look, we've got great competitors across the world, Seb. This is a $3 trillion market that McKinsey forecast is growing at 14% year on year. So you have great competitors everywhere around the world, and I think that what we want to make sure we offer is we offer merchants a choice and alternative to every brand in every market that we compete with. And look, Stripe, Addy, and WorldPay, there's great brands in this space, and we think that what is unique about Checkout is that our focus entirely is in that digital space. Mm-hmm. So every single dollar, every single resource, every investment we make in Checkout is behind solving that digital acceptance rate conundrum for the world's biggest digital brands. And over time, our focus and our strategy and our bet is that focus is really what delivers a better proposition to those digital markets. So yeah, look, it's a big market. There's lots of competition.
Yeah, I love it. And when you talk about solving that problem, how big a problem can that be for the customers that you are solving it for, or you want to solve it for?
Yeah, I think we've seen many of our products, and take one of the products we announced last week that we've made some innovations to. It's a product called Flow. It's like micro components that just connect merchants' environments to the checkout network. When we work with merchants around the world on that particular product, on the Flow product, we can see anything around the 7% uplift in acceptance rates. So, you think about that, Seb, right? If you can move an acceptance rate from 80 to 87 or from 85 to 92%, that can be hundreds of millions of dollars for brands that are processing, billions of dollars a year online. So the size of this problem, we talk about a lot at Checkout, we talk about chasing basis points. And exactly, if we can save 1 basis point or improve 1 basis point on the amount of volume that's conducted across our network, it can mean millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars to merchants around the world. And that's our inspiration, Seb. That's what inspires us every day.
No, yeah. It's when you put it in that 7 percentage points, it's a huge impact, right? And the bigger the partner, the bigger the merchant that you're dealing with, the more transformational that uplift can be. You talked about Flow Remember Me. I think it's quite an interesting new product development that was announced last week. But it seems like Checkout is also making other bets in this world. What other product developments have there been maybe in the last year or so that have been particularly exciting?
Yeah, there's sort of almost 3 or 4 levels to it, Seb. As you're building a global payments network, one of the things you can do is expand the number of territories that you enter. So, we've 2 years ago we went into Japan and started processing alongside the incumbents there. Last year we've announced the addition of Canada, working on that too. Obviously, we've talked about the US already. So there's a kind of there's a market rollout that you can kind of grow, and it's to enter a market to get the regulation and the licenses behind it, and then build the rails and build the networks with partners like Visa and MasterCard is obviously a lot of investment, a lot of resource that goes into that. You can also add payment methods. So all the way around the world, consumers have great preference in what they choose to use to pay. Part of Flow Remember Me is using AI to put the right payment methods in front of the consumers as and when they need to use them, which is an optimization that can lead to increased conversions and more sales for our merchants, which is obviously super, super important. There's the AI optimizations that we build into the network. And this is just, it's always been at the core of payments, Seb, really. In a way, we've kind of gone from machine learning tables into the use of AI and those sort of pieces. But there are machines that are learning how to process more and more transactions and get higher and higher acceptance rates all the time by changing data fields, changing the data packets that are involved, whether it's like device identification, or even as simple as upper and lowercase data fields of a postcode. all of those little things can be optimized in order to make sure that, a bona fide consumer can buy for bona fide goods with a bona fide merchant, and the reduction of fraud that goes around that, and et cetera, et cetera. So across all those levels, we're kind of, innovating in the system. We're also, investing in issuing with Visa and MasterCard now, so that we take complex payment flows in verticals like travel and fintech, and kind of help optimize where an awful lot of redundancy and kind of mitigations of cash. We're putting payment flows or cash flows into the payment network rather, with things like Checkout Business Account. So actually, making sure that people can start to move money easier and put money to work a lot easier. And then there's the whole settlement question too. So, right the way around the world, there's too many merchants that are dependent on banking hours being, extended beyond the weekend so they can get their money and actually put it to work. And it's amazing that if you think about the amount that's processed across our network, and if we can put that money to work on behalf of our merchants a little sooner, then you can start talking about how payment flows will optimize even things like working capital. So there's an awful lot of ways that we kind of, innovating in the core of the digital payments network, Seb, and it's building up that network. It's building the intelligence of the network and making sure that, we share all of those optimizations and power of that network with all of the merchants that are on it.
And what are you thinking about the future of commerce more broadly? You've talked about AI, you've talked about automation, but what about agentic commerce? Is Checkout imagining a world which is, I guess quite similar to the release of Flow Remember Me, but it's almost like your agent will know all your details, and maybe it doesn't even need to be a checkout merchant that you've used previously, or you're on the checkout Flow Remember Me, but maybe agents will remember all of your details, they'll do all the checkout for you. Are you kind of trying to build or predict a world in which agentic commerce or AI commerce kind of comes in and takes over?
Yeah, look, I think there's a lot of hype and a lot of talk about agentic, so for sure, and of course there's many brighter brains than mine that are sort of spending time in this domain and this sort of area. But look, I think a couple of fundamental things. I think that agentic commerce, first of all, is agents buying on our behalf, right? It's agents buying on behalf of consumers, and there are a plethora of implications for merchants. Let's put to one side, and maybe we can come back to it, Seb, if you want, but put to one side how you market to an agent, right? The world of search is going to be transformed, right? Your website is going to be transformed. People like me have cared about flow of websites and conversion rates on websites, and imagery on websites, and perhaps when an agent is buying on your behalf, they'll care less about the pictures and less about the web page structure. They'll care more about the data and the code that sits underneath it. So the agentic commerce is a huge topic for merchants to get involved in. Let alone how people discover those brands and get to know them. But when you think about the moment of payment, actually probably what's most important is the fundamental principle of trust and identity. Now, if an agent's buying on your behalf, who's really responsible for the transaction? Who's liable for the transaction? What happens when something goes wrong? How do you prevent bad actors from making agents that all of a sudden shop on behalf of Seb and all your listeners, and nobody knows how to get any of the money back if the flows are proven to be fraudulent? So that's the kind of trust dynamic that is the first principle that we're going to have to crack in agentic commerce. So how do you put trust in the system? And if you think back, when the world went from physical buying to digital buying in the first wave of e-commerce, we spent hundreds of millions of dollars putting trust into that system and creating card not present rules with Visa, MasterCard, and all the schemes and all the partners in the ecosystem around it, so that actually there was as much trust in the system as there was when you physically put your card in a machine and enter your PIN code, for example. So I think so trust is kind of the first paramount. And then the second thing I think that's super important is agentic commerce is going to be just another channel for merchants to reach consumers, right? Just like digital commerce and e-commerce was just another channel to reach the same consumer. And that's how we're going to have to think about it, because effectively, omnichannel is going to get another channel. And I think that as we think about this, for certainly enterprise merchants, it's not going to be one size fits all, Seb, right? If you think about, again, going back to e-com, right? IKEA had a different e-commerce strategy to Chanel. eBay had a different e-commerce strategy to Amazon, right? They were all fundamentally different, and they were fundamentally built on the basis of what business strategy and business model those merchants actually had in order to reach their consumers. So the first question, I think, for the merchants that we serve and we work with is, what is that business model? What is that business strategy? Because there are very few merchants in the world, very few retailers in the world that are going to want to open up all their SKUs with no branding, no support, no service, no logistics, no layer to an LLM model, and then allow agents to buy effectively from a blank warehouse, right? That's not a business model for many merchants that we work with. So, I think we're going to see the evolution of agentic commerce, driven by those pieces. But what we're working on now more than anything is making sure that the whole of the ecosystem, so our partnerships with Google, our partnerships with Visa, with MasterCard, the infrastructures that we're putting in place. So, the trusted agent protocol we announced with Visa yesterday, the AP2 network protocol that we announced with, Google 2 weeks ago. This is all putting trust into the system to create an ecosystem that merchants can then work with. But the most important thing for us is making sure that people take the time to listen to what a merchant's business model is and how you protect what a merchant's interests are in a world of an exciting new channel.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. So I think we've got a long way to go to build the trust first before we can even start talking about really using this technology to work in a meaningful and safe way. Look, I'm conscious we're running out of time. One of the things I absolutely wanted to talk about was the $12 billion employee share buyback scheme. This is an absolutely amazing result for so many employees, I imagine, at Checkout.com. Can you touch a bit on the rationale for why Checkout decided to do this?
Yeah, it's really simple. Guillaume, who's our CEO and founder, has a fundamental belief that the value that's created of an organization should be shared with its employees.
And was there always going to be an employee share buyback, or did you look at perhaps doing a secondary sale like lots of other organizations have done?
Yeah, look, I think that the driver here is the employee value, right? What the whole point here, Seb, is that we allow employees to join in the value that they've helped create. And look, there's lots of debate around private versus public markets, and I can tell you that, fortunate to be part of the executive team at Checkout, we don't talk about that an awful lot, right? We're very focused on, growing the business. What's the best product, the best proposition we can solve? I'm personally, tasked with how do we tell more people of the world the Checkout story and help to grow Checkout with our commercial colleagues around the world. So that's what we spend all our time on. And I think that, it's great that employees are, have this a chance to kind of get, access to some of the value they've created, and it helps long-term motivation of employees. I think you're going to see it more and more often with, we're not the first privately held company that's remained private for a long time that's used, the levers of buybacks as a long-term motivation tool. I think you're going to see more of it. And I think that with private finance being more widely available in the last 5 to 10 years than it ever has been, I think this is going to be a trend that you're going to see more and more, fintechs, tech businesses, growing companies that use this tactic more often. But the prime purpose here is how you cut employees into the value they help create.
No, that's amazing. And, I think from an outside perspective, it's absolutely amazing to see that, European operators getting real cash in their hands and, being able to convert those shares into real money that can be quite life-changing often. How is Checkout.com thinking about the broader ecosystem at all? Everybody's saying the market is crazy hot right now. We're in the midst of potentially a bubble. Has that changed the way that Checkout is looking at the wider market when it comes to things like the IPO market or fundraising again? How's Checkout looking at the market right now?
I can tell you that we don't even think about it.
Really?
As a management team operating the company, we don't even think about it. It's not even on the radar. We don't talk about it. We've got some great investors. Guillaume does obviously a great job with managing investors around the world and managing the company. We're focused on the operational execution of the business. Yeah. And honestly, Seb, been around long enough to know now that if we take care of our core proposition, if we take care of winning new customers, winning new merchants, and growing the business, all those great conversations that are in the future, they take care of themselves. Yeah. Right? I can honestly tell you it's not on the radar.
Amazing. Laser focused on building new products, delivering value, signing new clients. Amazing. Well, look, Rory, thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'm a huge fan. Thank you for your support on the Scaling Europe show, of course. But let's stay in touch.
Yeah, brilliant. Listen, look, I think you're doing an amazing job, Seb. I think it's an important, the world needs people to help companies like Checkout and many others in Europe tell their voice, right? The European techs need this platform. So really appreciate your work and thank you for your partnership.
No, love to hear it. Well, thanks, Rory.
Thank you.
Bye. Hello and welcome back. We are here with Taos, who is a partner at DMG Ventures and also one of the co-founders of OnStage. OnStage has got a whole lot going on right now. Can you talk about what's going on this week, next week?
Yeah, so firstly, thank you for having me on the show, and thank you for all the hype that you've been giving us for OnStage. Very much appreciate it over the past few weeks. There's a lot going on. I can maybe talk about what we actually do later for anyone who's not come across us before. But we essentially run Europe's largest startup demo day. Our next demo day is next Thursday. We've never done it in person before. It's always been virtual, so there's some nerves to see if we can pull it all off. But that's the kind of big headline event. And then in the run up to that, tomorrow, we're running a hack night in partnership with a bunch of notable startups like Lovable, Granola, and 11 Labs, plus a bunch of top VC funds like Atomico, Boulderton, Episode 1, Chapter 1, Antler. And it's all being supported by HSBC and HubSpot as well. So hopefully I've remembered all those names, but yeah, there's a lot going on the next week or so.
No, it's crazy busy. And like, can we go back in time? So I think OnStage is like 5 years old now.
Yep.
You and Hector set it up. What was it like in its infancy versus where it's at today?
A lot's changed. So the first 3.5 years, it was just myself and Hector. So Hector's a GP at Episode 1. I'm a partner at a consumer fund called DMG Ventures. And we really set it up as a side hustle, never intended it to be a business that monetized, but gradually found, or not even gradually, we quickly found product market fit. And then we started to get approaches from companies like HSBC, Innovation Banking, Google Cloud, and Cooley about accessing the startups and investors that we work with. So our first event was actually a month before the first COVID lockdown, and it was an in-person event. It was just in a very different format. So we ran a multi-fund office hours with 6 funds. So some of the funds that took part were funds like Playfair and Jamjar, so some of the top funds in the UK. But that model just wasn't particularly scalable. So it was essentially one-to-one conversations. It wasn't one-to-many pitches that we have today. And we quickly realized that for event 2, we had to switch to a demo day format where we thought it would be more scalable. So the first demo day was during COVID lockdown. And we had in our first event about 300 applicants, and that pretty quickly scaled to, I guess, 500 or so at the second event. And we're now at 1,500 applicants across Europe per demo day. And prior to this demo day, we were open to companies globally, but from this demo day, we're just focusing on European founders.
That's
so a lot's changed.
I mean, the volume has just exploded. 1,500 is crazy. Yeah, I mean, and I guess that now that you've built this brand, has it got easier to find those companies and have them apply, or is that still a bit of is it still hard work?
It's an interesting one. I think we have our proposition is a bit of a no-brainer. So a key part of our model is that there's no cost and really no time commitment for the founders and investors that take part. So I think when we do reach founders, it's an easy sell, frankly. The challenge that we have, which is inherent to all companies that are targeting pre-seed to seed startups, is that it's a completely new cohort of founders every 12 months. So you need to be able to kind of access all the different corners of the startup landscape to make sure that you're reaching all those founders. So I think it really comes down to a brand awareness point. I think our brand awareness is growing, and we do have very good brand awareness in Europe. Part of the reason, or a big driver as to how we've achieved that, is partnering with VC funds. So we partner with about 350 VC funds, which is essentially nearly all the top funds across Europe. Those funds promote Demo Day for us in exchange for access to all the applicants that we get. So yeah, that enables us to reach lots of corners. We've still got a long way to go. About 60% of our applicants for this demo day came from the UK. So I'd say we have 99.9% penetration in the UK. But there's still other areas of the EU and the rest of Europe that we can reach as well.
Super interesting. And how are you? I want to go to actually want to go to the hack night tomorrow night. So this is the first time that you've done this.
Yep.
What was the rationale? What's it been like getting that all kind of up and running and ready?
So we only decided to do it about a week and a half ago.
Nice.
It's been interesting. We're really happy with how it's going so far, though. So we had just under 200 applicants, a real range of people as well. Some senior engineers from some top tech companies and startups, university students, serial founders, etc. We decided to do it for a couple of reasons. One, I think as a pre-seed to seed platform, it's super important for us to build a funnel of those next gen founders. I talked a minute ago about the fact that you are selling to a completely new cohort every 12 months or so. We really need to start building relationships with that top talent early on. Two, as you talk about a lot in your content, velocity is becoming more important than ever. To be able to compete, you have to move at warp speed in terms of building the product and commercializing. And we really wanted to take that to the extreme with this Hack Night. So the concept is, can you build something worth more than £1 million in a couple of hours? So the idea is that people will build from scratch, probably people who have an idea but are ready to start a company. And then the winner will, one, pitch at Demo Day a week later for funding. And two, they'll be accepted onto the Antler Accelerator program as well. So yeah, I think they're the two key reasons why we're doing it, and I'm really interested to see how it ends up turning out tomorrow night.
And I thought that those prizes were really interesting. It's not just cash, but this is like a pathway to entrepreneurship. Getting onto the anti-residency program and having the opportunity to pitch in front of VCs. So if you are a top engineer at a company, this is like, okay, you could be a founder in 3 weeks, which I think is just an amazing, almost like twist on a classic hackathon. What kind of ideas are you looking, or are you hoping to see, or have you seen some things already that maybe you can share about what could people build that could be worth over £1 million in 3 hours?
It's a good question. So I'm a consumer investor in my day job, so I'm not the most technical person, but in a way I'm probably the perfect audience for this. I think it can be quite easy to go too deep into the tech that you're building and forget about the user experience at the end of it. But ultimately, these startups are going to be selling to probably or possibly non-technical people at the end. They really need a hook that will land with a massive range of people, whether it's a B2B company or a B2C company. So I'm looking for things that have that clear hook. And if you look at all the big all the startups that have gone on to be unicorns, they will start with a clear hook, and then they will build that suite of products out and a platform in the long run. But they start with very clear ROI that's easy to articulate in a minute. But then secondly, I'm just looking for something which I've never really thought of before. I think VCs sometimes can try to build their own theses in different sectors. But if I'm the one building a thesis in a sector and I have a clear idea of what should be built, it's probably not the most exciting idea, and that's the reason that I'm not a serial founder. So I'm looking for something, one, which I can immediately see the value from, and two, something that I've probably never even thought of before, and three, not just a copycat of something that's already out there. As you know, 99% of the value tends to accrue to the winner in a different vertical. So we're not just looking for the next Lovable or the next 11 Labs. It needs to be either focused on a clear niche or it needs to be a unique product.
Super interesting. And so you think if this goes well, you're going to be doing more of these?
That's the plan. So we think we want to build a program of events around Demo Day that really build up to Demo Day and augment Demo Day itself. And if this goes well, which I'm confident it will, the plan would be to do it ahead of the next Demo Day. And as you said, it is quite a unique take on a Hack Night where we're looking to take someone from idea to funding within a week. So yeah, I think tying it into Demo Day makes a lot of sense because it gives us a clear angle, because there are a lot of other hackathons out there, but this is really our differentiator.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think generally it's cash prizes or something is always what people get. But this is like so much more valuable. The opportunity to pitch in front of 300 VCs is, there's no other way that you could do that without,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is a unique opportunity for people. And maybe just to talk about what you touched on there, in terms of the format of Demo Day itself. So we will have about 250 VCs and angels in the room at Demo Day, doing it in London next week. And then we have 20 to 25 finalists pitching from the 1,500 applicants. It will be quick fire pitches. We're planning to have minimal distractions. So usually at a Demo Day, you'll have a big presentation behind you. Whereas at our Demo Day, we're really going to focus on the founder and maybe have a couple of points on what they're building in the background. But I think it will be quite, I think it will be like a visceral pitching environment, which I'm looking forward to. So yeah, whoever wins tomorrow night will get their 2 minutes in front of these 250 VCs.
And I think what's interesting about the live Demo Day is that previously it was kind of like, when I watched it before, it was all pre-recorded, pre-recorded versus live. It's so different. I know from doing my own content, pre-recorded is safe. You get it all done, you can edit it, you can adjust it, you can fix it, and then push it out, and you can just stream it live. Whereas going live is, a whole other complexity. How are you feeling about managing, the complexity of having all these people in the room, the founders doing back-to-back pitches, and making it go smoothly?
I'm lucky that I have a great colleague who you've interviewed on the show called Izzy, who is kind of heading up most of the organization. So I'm very grateful that we have her on the team. There are pros and cons to doing it live versus async. So you touched on some of them there. It certainly takes a lot of stress out of Demo Day when it's all pre-recorded. But it's a bit of a weird emotion when we've done it pre-recorded in the past, because there's a massive build-up to Demo Day, but then on Demo Day itself, as a team, we just sat there for a couple of hours and watched Demo Day and didn't really do anything. So there was, it was a really weird, emotional come down, I suppose, on Demo Day itself. And then we had the after party, which was great. But everything over the past few weeks is really built to Demo Day, and I think it will be like a bit of a crescendo in terms of the stuff we're doing, but also how we're feeling about it emotionally. So yeah, relatively confident that we'll pull it off logistically, and excited, but yeah, I'm sure something will go wrong on Demo Day, but that's just something that we'll have to be comfortable with.
Yeah, you just deal with it, I guess. And going back to onstage, you've been doing this for 5 years, is it? Come up to 6 years?
Yeah, 5.5. Yeah,
5.5 years. Looking back on the journey, what has been the biggest mistake that you think you've made?
Yeah. So probably about a year ago, I think we were at a point where Demo Day was running well, and we had proper processes in place internally, and we had a team that were up to speed. And I think we just took our focus away from Demo Day slightly, and we thought we could do all these other things, all these other events, have a full calendar throughout the year. And we did a lot of planning for some of these other events, and realized that, one, we were just stretching ourselves a bit too thin, but two, these other events were to the detriment of Demo Day itself. So we probably spent a couple of months going in the wrong direction there. But yeah, towards the start of this year, decided to refocus on Demo Day, cut away all the extra stuff, and really focus on building value for the investors and founders that we work with. So our ultimate metric, our KPI with Demo Day, is the number of introductions that we make between VCs and founders. And this is a key part of our model. So even though we have 20 to 25 companies that pitch at Demo Day, about 400 companies that apply end up getting an introduction to an investor. And in total, we deliver about 2,000 introductions between VCs and founders per Demo Day. So really, we just realigned on that being our number one goal and growing that as much as possible. And yeah, stepped back from trying to run all these other events and just focusing on monetizing them and adding value in different ways. I think we are now sticking to our lane, and we know what we need to do, and there's so much more that we can do with Demo Day itself. So program, just quickly, the program of events that I talked about, they're all going to be supporting Demo Day. So they're not just random other events throughout the year. They're all part of this program, which will strengthen the proposition of Demo Day itself.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's super interesting that I didn't realize so many of the companies that apply end up getting those introductions, which I guess is like a huge value add. It's not just like, oh, the top 1% will get to pitch, and therefore, you know, it's like anybody who applies and who kind of, gets that visibility, that opportunity to be introduced to investors. I wanted to touch on the Onstage Fund. You know, this has been talked about. Like, I spoke to Izzy about it when she came on. What was the thesis behind raising the Onstage Fund?
Yeah. So there's only so much I can say from a regulatory point of view, but I can touch on our thesis for building out an investment arm, if you like, which my colleague Joel is leading. So really, through Demo Day, we capture two things ultimately. One, we capture a lot of goodwill from founders and investors. For investors, we're delivering 3,000 plus companies per annum to them for very little effort, frankly. And then for founders, we're delivering all those intros that I talked about before. So we generate a lot of goodwill there, even if it's not a company that's made it to Demo Day. And then secondly, we generate a lot of data. So we know what investors are in, what sectors they're interested in investing in. We've also started to track the performance of founders after Demo Day. So we have an early view of the breakout companies. Like when they applied to Demo Day, for example, they might have been at idea stage, but if they're starting to generate some serious traction 6 months later, we can pick up on that really quickly. So those two things mean that we're pretty uniquely placed to build, some people don't like this term, but like an index model where we can essentially make lots of investments into companies across Europe where we're partnering with the top tier funds that we work with through Demo Day. And we're really leveraging the data and the goodwill that we generate. And I think the goodwill is probably more valuable in the short term in that it helps us get into competitive rounds, and founders and investors want to bring us into these rounds. And then the data over time will compound, and we'll have more insights on what traits we should be looking for in investors. And as I talked about before, identifying breakout companies early. So the Demo Day really gives us a unique platform, which we can leverage to build this index fund model for Europe.
So that's so interesting. I guess you've built such an amazing funnel of deal flow, and you've now built amazing relationships with the top tier VCs. You're starting to get enough data from previous Demo Days that you can now look at, you know, that you're definitely getting high quality enough companies that you could generate some amazing returns here.
Yep.
Have you seen anything that kind of connects or any key themes among some of those breakout companies? Are you starting to learn, okay, so from the previous batches or cohorts, it's these typical founders or these industries or something like that? Is there any themes kind of like behind behind it all?
Yeah.
That kind of helps you to pick?
One of the things that comes up again and again, which is maybe an obvious point, but companies which monetize early and just put a product into market tend to do very well because they get quicker feedback cycles, whereas some founders can agonize over products and wait 12 to 24 months before putting it into market. I think so. Early revenue generation is one. In terms of founders, and this is something we really index towards at DMG as well, founders who have magnetism, it might sound quite a superficial thing to say, but founders who have magnetism make a massive difference because those founders can, one, fundraise, two, they can attract the best talent, and three, they tend to be able to articulate their product better to customers as well, whether that be businesses or consumers. That magnetism is a core trait that we see in lots of founders that go on to be successful.
And how, when it comes to the fund, how is that going to tie in with Demo Day? Is this going to be something that you run behind closed doors and it's sort of more secretive? Or is it going to be like, well, you're pitching at the Demo Day, but you're also pitching to Onstage itself? Yeah. How's that going to work?
Yeah, so it's a slightly looser, or it will be a looser relationship than a YC where you kind of get funding as part of the program. So we'll be investing in lots of companies that come through Demo Day, but also some that we source outside of Demo Day itself. But in all cases, as I mentioned before, we'll be partnering with the tier one VCs that we work with through Demo Day. So it will definitely augment our proposition. And say we have 20 companies, I would hope we'd be backing 5 to 10 of them through the fund. Some of them might just be outside of our remit, or we might not do it for a different reason. Maybe they're too late stage or whatever it is. So yeah, it will definitely be part of the demo day proposition, but not a prerequisite of taking part, if that makes sense.
Got it. So that's quite a high number of tickets you'll be writing. That's really interesting. That really is like, yeah, okay. So if you're doing, maybe 5, maybe 10 a demo day, you do 2 demo days a year plus investments in between each demo day. That's probably quite a large number of investments you're going to be making.
Yeah.
And so from the onstage team, is that just going to be Joel who's kind of primarily leading that, or how involved will yourself and Hector be in making those decisions?
Yeah. So Hector and I will sit on the IC. As I mentioned before, we both have day jobs at funds, and us being at funds has lent a lot of authenticity to OneStage over the years as well. So there's a real strategic benefit, I think, to OneStage of that. So Joel will be leading it initially, and then we'll have an IC. So we have a couple of other members of the IC as well as me, Hector, Joel. But we'll build out the team over the long run as well.
Super exciting. Well, look, Taz, I'm excited for tomorrow night. I'm excited for next week. I'm obviously gonna be there. So yeah, look, well, thank you for joining me. It's super exciting. I love what you've built.
Great. Thanks very much, Seb.
Nice. Yeah, I'll see you tomorrow, I guess. Hello and welcome back. We are here with Tom Pope, co-founder and CEO of Adfin. How are you doing? Thank you for joining me, Tom.
Yeah, thanks so much. Excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, can you just give us a quick background into who you are and what you're building?
Yeah, so my name's Tom. What's my background? Gosh, it's relatively boring, to be honest. I was a consultant, a boring old consultant, and then got fortunate to join WorldPay at an exciting time in WorldPay's growth. Saw WorldPay through a number of acquisitions, quite a few actually, an IPO and 2 acquisitions, and then went to join a company called Tink, which is a fantastic Swedish startup. Then got acquired again by Visa, and then having been acquired quite a few times, thought, oh, this is kind of fun. Maybe I should give this whole startup thing a go myself, and that's why I'm here.
Yeah, I mean, you got the magic touch. I was doing my research, and I was like, you spent.
I'm not sure about that.
You spent like
overestimate my importance a bit there. Son.
or like maybe you're like a lucky charm or something. But you spent like a decade in fintech, and you've been through what did you say? 2 acquisitions and an IPO just at WorldPay, and then Tink as well. It's like. I think normally people spend some time at startups, and most startups don't see the success that you'd like, and so you try out a few, and maybe one of them is a success, but that hasn't been your experience. What was it like going through various acquisitions of both Tink and WorldPay?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's actually 4 because Deloitte was acquired. Monitor was acquired by Deloitte. Well, WorldPay IPO'd, then the IPO'd WorldPay was acquired by Vantiv, then Vantiv was acquired by FIS, and Tink was acquired by Visa, so 4/5.
That's ridiculous.
I mean, obviously at the time, I'd love to claim at the time I was this kind of really mature, great corporate employee that took it really well and immediately networked myself with the new organisation and did all the things you're supposed to do. Quite the opposite. Often I was a grumpy bastard, sometimes resisting change. I think now, the benefit of hindsight, my piece of advice for everybody is always, the second that acquisition happens, it's a new company. Don't try and cling on to anything. You've been acquired. You either get on board with the new company or you leave. There's no resistance. There's no point trying to change anything. It's happened. It's out of your control. Get on with it. I think I got better at that by the end of my career, but now I'm certainly not a lucky charm. Those things all happened despite me, not because of me. But I was very grateful they did, because it kind of gives you an extra free opportunity in your career, right? Like you're doing one thing and then suddenly a bunch of new doors open because you've been acquired. So it's quite good.
Yeah, and what about your, like I said, you spent like a decade in fintechs. What about your experience both at Tink and WorldPay kind of made you want to take the leap into entrepreneurship yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I always have this itch, right? I mean, I suspect it's true that most founders have got some little bit of entrepreneurialism in their background somewhere. Like, I mean, I was first doing entrepreneurial things when I was 4 years old, right? It's a classic cliche founder's story, but I was stapling bits of paper together and stamping it with an owl and selling it to my sisters so that I could take all their pocket money every month. So like, I've always had a kind of a bit of that in me, and at university I did various bits and bobs. But it was only after kind of working in places like Tink that I thought, hang on a second, this is actually achievable, right? Like I really could build a multi-billion-dollar business here. Like, I've worked with people who have done that, and I think I could do it too. I was also super fortunate to meet my co-founder who, I have a skill set, but there's a lot of things I also don't know, and I was fortunate to meet someone who has like exactly the opposite skill set to me, so that we can kind of come together as the right team at the right time. But yeah, I mean, I learned a lot, I guess, about payment infrastructure when I was at WorldPay and Tink. That's important. I suppose you learn a lot about people, and you find great people. And one of the reasons we've been able to get the traction we have is just that we brought in the very, very best people that have worked with us over our careers. So you learn a lot about infrastructure, you learn a lot about the people, and you learn a lot about the market. And Adfin is solving a problem that we very much saw in payments. Payments was all about e-com. It was all about point of sale. No one was really looking after this huge segment of the economy, which is not Amazon or a sexy e-com brand, or going out and selling new software to restaurants. There's a whole section of the economy which was just completely neglected, and that's part of the reason we started Adfin, is we saw that gap and wanted to jump into it.
And I want to touch on 2 things there. Firstly, so you're saying you've hired almost exclusively from companies that both you and your co-founder have worked at?
Yeah, I mean, Chiprin has the most amazing network of engineers. I have a pretty good network of go-to-market people. Most people at Tink, and that's most people at Adfin, Freudian slip. Most people at Adfin. Well, I say that because actually I did the same when I went to Tink, right? Like I brought some of the best people I've ever worked with into Tink as well.
Yeah.
But most people we've worked with have been people we've worked with before. I think we worked out the other day, average time we have worked with someone at Adfin is 7 years, which, given that Adfin is a year and a half old, tells you what you need to know.
That's so interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
And how were you able to convince those people to come on board with you?
Oh, come on, what kind of a question is that? You know, they weren't really convincing. They were queuing up at the door.
Well, Tink, WorldPlay, they hit this huge scale and it's successful exits, and then all of a sudden you're like, well, come back in the trenches, we're going to do it all again, 0 to 1. Were people like, okay, let's do it, or was there an element of, I'm comfortable, things are going well, don't pull me out of this place?
Yeah, I mean, there are a few people out there who are still in those positions. I've still got people on my list that are in those positions that I'm still confident one day I'll get over. Everyone has to make the right decision for their time of life. I think some people, if they're at the right level of seniority post acquisition, the lock-in can be so good that it's impossible to get people out. But actually, for most people, most of the time, it's not. And actually, for most people, it's not, the money is just one thing, right? Like, it's great if someone's going to give you $1 of cash, but if in return you hate your job and you hate your colleagues and you're putting up with loads of terrible politics and your IT is awful and your laptop breaks and they won't let you install the program that makes you more effective and you have to get permission every time it's amazing how quickly your life can be made miserable with the wrong acquirer.
Yes.
So startups suddenly look very, very appealing compared to that.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. And you also touched a bit on traction. I want to go slightly back in time. You raised an $8 million, €8 million round from Index Ventures, Visionary Clubs, angels from across the ecosystem from some of the most amazing companies. I want to talk about that seed round. So if you could touch a bit on that process, how you found that, and then I want to get onto results, traction, what's happened since.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we did a pre-seed of $4.5 million back in April last year, and then we did another top-up essentially of $8 million in January. How do we find it? I think both Chiprin and I were fortunate in that because, we both had relatively sort of successful careers to date. Chiprin was the founding engineer at a very successful banking software company called Mambu. I essentially got very lucky, as we've already heard, throughout my career. Although it's amazing how much investors would go, well, it must be something to do with you. It's like, no, it really wasn't. But anyway, I'll take it. But because of that, we were fortunate to have a good network already within the community, and investors were already reaching out and saying, hey, you guys are going to start something. Maybe they're better at spotting restless people than we are in recognizing it ourselves. I don't know. But they reached out. We were actually introduced by Index originally. I'd never known Chiprin before the summer before we raised, and we'd both been introduced to a number of people. It's kind of like speed dating, and we just happened to click, and then sort of spent 6 months or so getting to know each other, germinating the idea, kind of working out who the original founding team would be, because we had a really strong team of people that we also call co-founders join from the beginning. That was also really important to us, right? It was kind of me and Chiprin, but then there was also a wider group of people who were key to the beginning. The fundraise, we were fortunate to have a decent amount of interest. I think kind of after that pre-seed round, we had really good initial traction, and both our internals said, look, we're keen to do more. We want to up our stakes. It was the right time for us because we wanted to put the foot on the gas. We didn't want to go out to market and do a really extensive new fundraise. So that's what we did. And we were really happy with them, right? Like, they're both great investors. They were giving us great advice. We just thought, what more could we want than more money from these people? Fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, amazing. I mean, phenomenal investors with some of the strongest track records in European tech. Absolutely. And what enabled you to raise that top up of 8 million? Was it traction that you'd seen? Was it a more robust product? What kind of unlocked that for you?
Yeah, I think it was traction. I mean, we started in April with nothing. Team started. It's a testament to the quality of our engineers that by June we had our first product live with our first customer. we had pretty quickly zeroed in on where in this huge space of business payments we wanted to start, and it was accountants. And we worked that out essentially by talking to everybody and working out who wanted to talk to us the most. And accountants wanted to talk to us the most. We thought, great, that's where we're going. And then we spent from June till Christmas, really, the second half of 2024, doubling down on really with those first initial customers, doing all the classic playbook, right? Like you work with your customers, you ask them what their problems are, they tell you, you build a product, you give it to them, they say, yes, this works, no, this doesn't. You iterate, you build, you bring on board more customers. And so by the end of last year, we're in a position, I actually can't remember what the numbers were now, but we had like just a very decent set of customers who were really liking the product. Investors, obviously, they don't tell you they're doing this, but they often call up those customers and say, hey, this admin thing, do you like it? And I guess they said yes. Otherwise, they wouldn't have invested. And so, yeah, the timing was kind of right from us and their perspective as well.
And since then, are you doubling down on kind of accountants? Are you branching out? Are you seeing other use cases?
Yeah. We've also always been quite hot on the legal space. Lawyers are larger firms, and larger firms take longer to move, but we very much are still focused on accountants. We love them. They're still our top customers. I think we're pretty well embedded in that community now, which is great. One of the things we love about accountants is, accountants want to be as useful as possible to the businesses that they serve, right? They are fundamentally in a professional services client service role. So the more we can help accountants be useful, the more, our relationship with the accountants improves. So with our product, it's not just suitable for accountants, it can be suitable for their customers. So a lot of our work is how do we make the product as useful as possible to the accountant and for the accountant's customers so that the accountant can take that role front and center in helping their businesses. So for Adfin, what that means is, we help the accountant get paid, but then we also help the accountant get their customer get paid.
Got it.
So there's a really nice network effect there, which we're really, really doubling down on.
Amazing. And can you share anything about traction or stats since either launch or since your round?
Yeah, what would I say? This year we've been consistently growing at 50% month on month at least,
Amazing.
Which is really strong. Yeah, it's been going really well. And the nice thing is everything's sort of growing in lockstep, right? So we get more invoices on the platform. We're seeing those invoices consistently turn into more payments, and those payments consistently turn into revenue, which is good. I think we would love to see it grow even faster. We've got some tricks up our sleeve. We've got a few tweaks and things we're going to be doing to really accelerate it into next year. But yeah, so far I think it's very hard because as a founder, you never really know whether what you're doing is good, right? So, and you're always, you're incredibly humble to the fact that at any given time it could not go well. So you never know. But I'd say right now we are as happy as we could be while also being profoundly unhappy that it isn't going faster. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Doesn't make sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's just like the founder attitude or ambition, right? It's never quite good enough, even if things are going well, and you're probably always scared that things could crumble at any moment.
I feel quite sorry for our team a lot of the time because we'll get on a call and we'll have had the best. In fact, it literally happened last week. We had the best week ever last week. We breached a new ceiling, and apparently after one of the guys says to me, he's like, yeah, why were you so grumpy? I was like, well, because, this thing over here. He's like, yeah, but we've just had our best week ever. I was like, yeah, but we have our best week ever, like, quite often. Like, it's about whether it's. But yeah, it is. I think it can be tough for the team because it's like, when do you pause and celebrate?
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah. Is that something that you feel that you haven't done enough of yet? Is like looking back and being like, oh, actually, we've signed loads of clients, we're doing good money, things are going well.
I don't know when I will ever feel comfortable enough to do that. Because for me, the point at which you stop and celebrate is the point at which hubris is kicked in and some young whippersnapper company will come up and steal our lunch. So I don't know. I'd love to have that, like, that kind of, you can picture it, right? You're all on a hillside in Tuscany and you've got the champagne out and you're like, guys, we've done so well. We've nailed it. We are successful. Congratulations. But I don't know if that will ever come, to be honest. Or if I want it to come.
I was going to say, I think a lot of founders that at that point, it's no longer, it's about the grind, right? It's about the challenge. It's about, what's like pushing the rock up the hill or whatever. And so when you get there, you're probably going to like even naturally make it harder for yourself so that you can get back into that grind feeling.
Yeah, totally.
And you also mentioned like your initial career as a consultant. I always ask guests on the show who started their career as consultants. That's how I started my career. I did it for 3 years. I was at PwC Strategy and didn't like it, not for me. Wanted to get into tech as soon as possible. What was your experience was it your first graduate job?
It was. So honestly, I don't know. Maybe some of your listeners will resonate with this. When I was at university, essentially, if you wanted to come to London and not be bankrupt, and you didn't have tons of imagination like me at the time, you either were a banker or a lawyer or a consultant.
Yeah.
I was never going to be a lawyer because the idea of it bored me. I was never going to be a banker again because the idea of it bored me. I thought consultants seemed great. You're going to work with lots of interesting businesses. I was fortunate to join a company called Monitor, which was a great boutique consultancy, fantastic people. We had a lot of fun. Unfortunately, maybe like yourself, I was kind of joining at the end of the boom of consulting. So you'd sit in the office and hear all these partners tell you about the glory days of Concorde and, jetting into far-flung places on private jets. And the reality is you were sat in economy with your little IBM ThinkPad at 3 a.m. cursing your life. But I still loved it. It was, then the company obviously got bought by Deloitte. That was a very different culture. I guess going back to what I said about being acquired, at that time and at that age, I was not ready to accept the new world, right? I wanted the old world, so that's why I chose to leave. But that wasn't because Deloitte wasn't a great company. It was because I just had never chosen to work in a company like Deloitte. I'd chosen something that was almost the opposite.
And could you have seen yourself staying for longer if that hadn't had happened?
Yeah, I would have done another few years, I think, just because it is amazing the growth you get in those places. And I to this day, we still have a bit of a bias at Advin, and I always have a bit of a bias to hiring people who have kind of had that training. Like it's a bit like kind of you're broken in a bit, right? Like you're taught the meaning of hard work. Like I think a lot of UK grads, I was pretty cocky when I was in my early 20s, and I needed that kind of like beating out of me by partners at Monitor. I'm kind of grateful they did. And I think, being shown, okay, this is what, a year of being on a really rubbish case and working till past midnight every night looks like. Until you've done that, you sort of don't know you can do that.
I think
I still recommend it.
Yeah, I mean that's always a value that because you don't learn the hard skills in consulting, but what you do learn is just how to work really, really hard, and you learn attention to detail, and there's like a bit of like stakeholder management kind of stuff. But I think that is the value. It's just like grinding and getting stuff done and being that, and it's so hierarchical, right? You go in at the most junior level and you are literally like formatting slides, and you're like, what is this?
It's crazy. I can't wait for AI to disrupt it. That said, I am really good at spotting double spaces in slides now. I used to have a really sadistic partner who would deliberately insert double spaces and then kind of like haul you over the coals if you hadn't spotted that there were these double spaces. You look back on it, it's like, what was the point in that? But I guess it teaches you a good...
Well, the thing is, consultants do make nice slide decks. The problem is that whenever I've made slide decks in the last year or so, I've done it exclusively on AI. And it's like, and they're not as good. And I do spend then a lot of time moving things like 2 millimeters.
No slide decks at Advin. I think we've probably only made, I don't know, 2 or 3, probably for our fundraisers.
Yeah, and that's probably it, right?
A slide deck,
yeah, super interesting. But yeah, I always ask because I think you do get a lot of ex-founder consultants. There is a path there. It's not always immediate. They don't go from consultant to founder or entrepreneur. But there definitely is a path there, and I think there'll be some great analysis there, especially when you look at those top tier, either boutique or MBB style consulting firms. There definitely does seem to be a path where people at least kind of, do a bit of learning or training or grinding in those early years and then find their way to entrepreneurship.
I agree.
Yeah, interesting. Of course, just running out of time. What is like top of mind for Advin next 6 months?
Good question. I suppose I could give you a really what would be the answer? There's some really boring things, right? Like as ever, there's like the prosaic, right? Like we know we need to get better at product marketing, right? But that's kind of humdrum. I think for us, we have got this really great traction now in the UK. We feel really good about it. We want to accelerate it even further. So top of mind for us is what do we do to accelerate further in the most sustainable way, right? Like we're in a fortunate position where we don't need to raise any more funds, right? Like we should be profitable before our next fundraise.
That's amazing.
We want to be in that position where the UK business is just like a really good business, right? It's selling something that people want for the right price, happy customers, good business, profitable. We'll definitely get there. I think then the question is, how do you put your foot on the gas as much as possible? Because we don't want to become one of those fintechs that get stuck in the UK. This is an amazing time in the company. We're still relatively small. Everyone's super elastic. Like, it's the time to do really, really bold things, right? Before you get too structured. So I think we definitely next year want to do a big market launch somewhere. Probably raise some money to support that. But yeah, so next 6 months, get the UK into a position where we feel like the business is just like super solid, and then go replicate in other places. Go forth and multiply.
Are you looking at specific markets? Are you thinking Europe or US?
Oh, it's the age-old dilemma, isn't it, for founders? The age-old dilemma. Europe is great because it's close and familiar. US is great because it's big and speaks your language. I think we are leaning towards the US, to be candid. It does change sometimes, but we're leaning towards the US because we've heard from a number of customers that there are as similar or even bigger pain points there to what we're solving here in the UK. We like the size of the market. I've worked a lot in America. I've worked a lot I've been acquired mostly. In fact, I've always been acquired by American companies, right? So I've spent a lot of time out there. I've got a good network out there as well. As I said earlier, half the battle with these kind of companies is you just have to work with the very, very best people. Yeah. We've been fortunate to have them so far at Advent. I think when we go to America, we've got a good network of great people who can help us. So we're good.
Amazing. Well, look, I'll be watching. I'll be cheering you on. It seems like you're crushing it, and it's an exciting time to be at Adfin. But look, thank you so much for joining me, Tom. And if there's anything that I can do to help or support or talk about news at any point that's relevant, just let me know, and yeah. I'd love to do whatever I can.
That'd be great. No, for sure. I'm glad we met.
Yeah, me too. Me too. No, shout out to Index for the
exactly.
intro.
Good. Well done, Lewis.
Yeah, amazing. Well, look, Tom, thank you so much, and let's stay in touch.
Well, thanks so much, Seb. Talk soon.
All right, we're off. Nice.
Okay, cool. Nice.
Amazing. Well, look, Tom, that was great. Thank you so much for joining me. We've got, my producer just said we've got all of your audio, we've got all your video. So yeah, you're good to go whenever. But good fun. It sounds like it's like Hello and welcome back. I'm joined by Mark Fairless, the CEO of Clearbank. Mark, thank you for joining me.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
It is my absolute pleasure. Clearbank is an amazing organisation, amazing UK fintech. But for those who haven't heard, can you talk a bit about the role that Clearbank plays in the ecosystem?
Yeah, absolutely. We at Clearbank are building the financial infrastructure behind the next generation of digital finance. And that's across payments, clearing, and embedded banking. So I guess what that means is that we help fintechs, banks, and now corporates hold, move, store money in real time, all through kind of modern cloud API native technology, rather than the sort of legacy systems that have held them back in the past. So we were the first new clearing bank for 250 years. As I say, born in the cloud, API native, ISO 20022 standards. And what we have really been able to do is unlock the fintech boom that there has been in the UK. And that's our mission, right, is essentially to unlock the potential of our clients so that they can have the freedom to do what they want to do and not have to worry about the kind of the plumbing and the infrastructure behind what they do. That's our job.
Yeah. I think that's a great way of putting it. You've built the infrastructure to enable the fintech boom that we've seen in London. You're partnering with amazing organisations. I read Revolut, Wealthify, Chip. Everybody knows these well-known, often consumer-facing fintechs have done amazingly well. I think what they don't always realise is that you're kind of like have built the rails to enable these companies to provide the level of services that they do.
That's right. I mean, I'm quite often in conversations actually where I'm talking to people in the market and they don't realise they've got a Clearbank account. Yeah. So the sort of beauty of embedded banking is, other organisations. So you mentioned Wealthify, there's Chip, there's Tide, there's any number of them, right? So we're white labelling our bank accounts through those other organisations so that they don't have to be a bank. They can offer banking products. But fundamentally, it's a Clearbank product at the end of it. So it's quite a unique kind of business model that we have in the UK. We're the only real scale player doing that, and it's been a huge success for us. So we now have 8 embedded banking partners, but behind them are sort of 2.5 million end consumers. Most of whom don't realise that it's Clearbank that they have an account with. It's a great product.
You're very UK focused, but you've definitely been looking at European expansion. I think are you live? Have you already expanded into some European markets?
Yeah, right. So we were founded in the UK, yeah. And we sort of got going in 2017 in the UK, and there's a huge amount still for us to do in the UK. So lots planned. But you're right. So European expansion is the first step on our international expansion. So we got our license with the DNB in August of last year, and we've been ramping up ever since. We really got going in March of this year when we got live with all the different payment schemes, and we're having huge success there. So I guess going to the EU, what that's enabling us to do is not only win new business in the EU and support fintechs and the same innovation that we've had in the UK translate over into the EU. What it's also doing is it's allowing our UK customers to move with us into the EU. We're a very client-led organisation, and the hypothesis of going to Europe was because we want to help our clients achieve what they want to achieve. And if they're in the EU, if they're in Europe, then that's where we should be as well, in order to better support them. And it really puts us as a regional player for the first time, so able to take on much larger organisations and help them to innovate and access the real-time kind of payment infrastructure and the embedded banking infrastructure that we have on a much larger scale than we've been able to do in the past. So there's a huge opportunity in the EU for us. It's a market that's sort of 4 to 5 times the size of the UK. We're really excited about that, and we've had some good early success. We've now got nearly 25 clients live. The payment volumes are growing very well. We're passporting across the EU. We're about to open our first branch, so really excited about what we can do in Europe as well as in the UK.
That's amazing. But what does that launch or expansion look like? Are you able to keep your team here, or do you need offices or kind of like headquarters in Europe as well?
So the beauty of what we do is, we've built a fantastic tech platform, a fully scalable, resilient, as I talked about, cloud API native. It's really the sort of crown jewels of what we do, and that can be taken to different geographies. So it's the single sort of tech stack, single product set that we've taken to the EU and that we'll take to others, and so a shared platform. And so, as far as possible, there's a real benefit from that business model. However, we are a bank, and we have a banking license in the UK and a banking license in the EU. We take the view that in order to be successful, we want to be close to our clients as well. So there is a footprint in the Netherlands. So we're based it out of Amsterdam for our EU bank. As I say, also opening branches in France where we'll look to hire some people as well. But so we will absolutely have a European footprint. I think that just makes sense, both in terms of understanding the market locally, understanding what the clients want locally, understanding the intricacies of different payments and schemes and regulatory environments. So we will stay a UK footprint heavy business, but we're absolutely on a expansion drive in the EU as well. And
the organizations that you've started to partner with across Europe, have they been the similar type of organizations with the very similar use cases that you've done in London and the UK, or are you seeing slightly different pulls or customer profiles?
Yeah, it's been really interesting, actually. So going back to sort of why we went to Europe, we went to Europe to better support our existing client base. And about half of the clients that we've got live in Europe at the moment were already UK clients. Mm-hmm. So a high proportion of them are moving with us. So they already had banking partners in Europe, but our partnership is in a good place where they are willing to then move to us to kind of better execute on their product set, their ambition, their own purpose. And then about half of them are net new clients, but they're all kind of in the fintech and banking space. So similar, all want to kind of change financial services in their own way and with different propositions for their clients. And so we do see a big sort of similarity in the client base in the EU. At the moment in the EU, we're focused on clearing and payments rather than the sort of embedded banking that'll come later. But already we're getting a lot of inbound interest in European businesses of a similar nature to the UK businesses that we already partner on embedded banking. So the demand is there, and it's great. I mean, it is a different market. We didn't go into Europe with the assumption that it's a copy and paste of the UK. I think that would have been a mistake. There's lots of nuances within that, and of course Europe is a single market, but of course it's sort of not. Yeah. And there's a lot of regional variations around that. So that's why I sort of talk about we're going into branches. France makes sense first for a branch. There's a lot of kind of regional variation between the different EU states. But no, so I guess in summary, I guess it's similar. It's currently a similar client base who have seen the success that we've had in the UK and are coming with us to join that in Europe.
No, amazing. And you talk about the complexities of scaling in Europe and the fact that it isn't really a single market, especially when it comes to financial services and the complexities there. Did you ever think, okay, maybe the US would be a better market to go after first? I mean, we're seeing a lot of the UK fintechs, whether it's Starling, Monzo, Revolut, are all trying to tap into the US market now. Was that ever an option, or did Europe always just make the most sense?
Yeah, and so it's definitely something we looked at because I think the first three would always be, I think, UK, EU, US. Yeah. And the question is in what order. So exactly the right question. I think what we did, the view we took was there's more client centricity by going to Europe first. So that's where our clients were more present. That's where the demand was coming from our clients. And so I say we're a client-led business. But having now done that and scaling very successfully so far in Europe, the demand is now for the US. So we are looking at how might we do that. And you're right, it's increasingly a market that the UK fintechs and neobanks, unicorns are all kind of heading towards. They've all got a similar strategy, I think, for how they're going to get there, which is actually a great success. A success that the UK should be proud of, that we've managed to build and scale these businesses to a size where not only are they successful in the UK, but turning their attention to the US. So the EU made sense on the basis of our clients and what they wanted, but they also want the US, and so that's what we're looking at next.
Really interesting, and I think that makes sense from a market expansion angle. When you look at product expansion or new innovative products, how are you and how is ClearBank thinking about the excitement that we're seeing over something like stablecoins at the moment? Is that a space that you're getting yourself interested in? Are you able to facilitate kind of accounts or payments in that space? Are you looking at doing something in that sort of like that new world?
Yeah, so stablecoins is a really exciting development for a variety of reasons. And if you look at what the success and the way it's taken off in the US, with trillions in transactions now, the success of Circle, you can see that stablecoins are making rapid impact on payments and financial services, and our view is that is likely to continue, and we welcome that. I think what it enables is the removal of friction and complexity in the payment flow. Enables kind of real-time cross-border payments, which we've not really is not an easy thing to achieve. So stablecoins are a really interesting and innovative solution to a kind of problem of complexity. I think we want to be at the edge of innovation on payments and clearing. We are a clearing bank, the first for 250 years. So if we want to be in that space, we have to adapt with where that's going. And so we are kind of very closely looking at what is it we can do there. We have signed some partnerships that we'll announce in due course about our plans in that space. I think looking at the difference between the UK and the EU, what we can see is that the EU are a bit further ahead at the moment in terms of the regulatory framework with the MiCA regulations. I know the UK are looking to be kind of fast followers and to accelerate the kind of regulatory framework there. So we will welcome that when it comes for the UK. But in the meantime, I think in the EU, there's some interesting things we can do. We absolutely want to be looking in that space and embracing it and moving with the times and continuing to kind of embrace the innovation in the sector.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's so many exciting things going. It seems like it's having such a big moment. But it sounds like there's definitely things that you're working on, and we'll probably be able to talk about more in due time. I also wanted to touch on your background as a CFO. You joined ClearBank as a CFO. You then kind of got promoted and brought in as CEO. What's that experience and that transition been like from CFO to CEO, and how has your role changed?
Yeah, it's a great question. What I've had a few times, and I think people sometimes struggle with my answer, which is it hasn't been that big, as big a transition as maybe people may think. And you go, well, why would that be the case? But I guess as CFO, you have a very good understanding of the business, right? So you know how the business works. You know what the drivers of it are. You know the main players that you're dealing with. You're outward facing, and you are dealing with the strategy and the direction of the organisation. So you know the organisation inside out, and that's a pretty good basis for sort of moving. And it was a fantastic honour to be asked to be the CEO of ClearBank. I think it's a privilege, and I think ClearBank is a business that over the next few years is going to continue to do great things and innovate in the market. I think the key differences, I guess, coming to that part of the question, And it's, you know, it's all upside from my perspective. Spending time with clients, dealing with a broader range of colleagues and issues, the breadth of what you have to deal with as a CEO is substantially more than the CFO. And also as a CFO, you're kind of a strategic advisor. As the CEO, you've got to make the decisions, and so that's a big difference too. But fundamentally, you know, the things that come with it, the kind of meeting clients, understanding what they need, mapping out a path forward, I love all of that. So it's been a really welcome transition for me. Very much enjoying it, and I can't wait to see kind of what we can deliver over the next few years at ClearBank.
Amazing. And what do you think, or how has being the CFO shaped your? I mean, in some ways, it's almost easy, right? Because you say you've got an amazing visibility of the business, you know the business inside out. But how has it shaped the way that you know, or has it changed the way that you approach those customer relationships or the product side of things, having that CFO background?
I'm sure it has. It's sort of part of my training, part of my experience, part of who I am. I guess if I think about what skills sort of a CFO brings, the experience that a CFO brings and how that translates across to sort of the things that are going on, I suppose when I was a CFO, I was focused on how do we build this business for scale, right? It's grown rapidly, grown very quickly. What we need to do is make sure that we're investing in the right places so that we can scale this business in the right way, at the right pace, and all of those things. And that essentially is sort of building a machine within the business to sort of take it forward. And I think, you know, moving over to CEO, that continues to be a focus, but in a very different way. So how do we make sure, as you know, we're now an organization of 800 plus people. And so the way we think about moving forward is different to when we had 200, 300 people. So how do we set ourselves up for the next stage of our evolution, of our growth, and really kind of untap the sort of talent of everyone in the organization and mature as an organization without losing the essence of who we are. We're really proud of the culture we've got and the relationships and the collaboration that we have. We need to keep that. But we need to sort of build ourselves a scalable environment that we can continue to grow in. So I think that is one kind of, I guess, read across from being the CFO. But I've also intentionally tried to vacate the space of the CFO. We now have another CFO. I'm not going to step on his toes. So that's for him now. And I've kept him, given him a wide berth so that I don't get involved in that, and thrown myself much more into the product side of things, the client side of things, where, you know, actually, and it's great because it's really interesting part of the business, and a part of the business where I have, I think, strong views on what we need to do. So yeah, so as I say, really enjoying it.
Yeah, no, it's good to hear. And you know, there's been a lot of talk about the state of both the UK more generally, but also the tech market as a whole. You know, putting on your CFO hat, what do you make of the market at the moment? And is that, you know, I know that ClearBank raised I think a bunch of money earlier this year or last year from Apax Digital. Are you thinking about the state of the market, whether that's capital markets and IPOing, whether that's the opportunity to run secondaries, whether that's the ability to raise more money? Are you looking at the market dynamics, and is that shaping the vision that you have for ClearBank?
Yeah, you're right. So we're fortunate to have raised some money in 2022 with Apax Digital, and that, you know, combined with, I guess, profitability in the UK bank, we're very well funded for the plans that we have. But of course, we're always looking at the state of the market and what's happening. And I think, you know, if you look more broadly, what you can see, you know, and I'm sure everyone sort of is familiar, that the state of the IPO market in the UK, I think, isn't where we want it to be. The liquidity in the market isn't quite there. The valuations aren't there, and you see that in the number of businesses that are choosing to list in the US, where, you know, the perception is it's an easier place to list. There's greater risk appetite for growth stocks, growth businesses, and so you get a higher valuation and access to deeper pools of capital. Now, I think there's a lot of focus. I think the government are focused on what they can do to help the UK market. I think there's some green shoots in terms of stuff that's happening. It's great to see Shawbrook announce that they were looking at an IPO in the UK. I think Revolut have announced that they're looking at a dual listing. So, and there's the Pisces market where there's the ability to exchange private shares. So there's things happening that are moving in the right direction. I think there's a lot of will to make the UK more competitive on an IPO side, and I think that will happen. I think we will get there. I think there's a huge amount of UK success stories waiting for that to happen, and I think once it starts to happen, then it'll happen really quickly, and we'll see that grow. But as for ourselves, I've essentially, taking up the CEO role, mapped out our strategy for the next three to 5 years. That doesn't require any primary capital raises or anything of that nature. So for now, we're focused on executing on that strategy.
Amazing. Can I ask, when you look at something like Pisces, is that something that's like interesting or exciting for ClearBank? Not necessarily whether you take part in it, but is that something that you look at and think, okay, this is a government that is willing to try innovative things to try and reopen our capital markets up in some way or another?
I think it's as a sign of intent and a sense of direction. I think it's really positive. I think you take that, but you also take things like the Leeds reforms that were announced at the Mansion House speech earlier this year. You can see that the government are serious about tackling the issue. I think there's definitely been a recognition that we've had a huge volume of success at the startup level, and now we've got a series of businesses going through kind of a scale up journey, and they're not quite getting the same level of support that they did as startups. So how do we help them grow? And I put ClearBank right in that camp. And so the sort of Leeds reforms that were announced by the Chancellor earlier this year, with changes around MREL and capital requirements, changes around kind of the timeframes for regulatory approvals, for SMCR, the creation of scale-up unit. That there's lots of things that are happening that are moving us in the right direction. And so I'd say that with Pisces and other things are a real signal of intent that the government is looking to support the growth, continued growth of the sector that's been such a success.
It's a great intent, and it does look like the market is changing at the moment with like Shawbrooks and other companies, and what are they called, the Beauty Group IPO'd, and Revolut dual listing. It feels like we really reached the bottom, and it feels like now we're starting to see things turn up again. But look, Mark, I'm conscious we're out of time, but thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure to chatting. I love what you've built. I love what you're kind of providing through your products for the fintech ecosystem. And let's stay in touch.
Fantastic. Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Amazing. Thanks, Mark. Alex, yes, of course. So for those at home, thank you so much for joining me. I will be back next week, so stay tuned.